Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Temporal Drift. I could still feel the biting pressure of the zip ties on my wrists, the echoes of my parents' screams ringing in my ears. Time travel was my lock and key, a temporary solace from the agony of my past. But now, it felt like something more, a last-ditch effort to preserve my soul, to outrun the ghosts of my mistakes. I had never imagined that a time travel discovery, once a triumph, would come to haunt me. But there it was. George Walsh had entered my life under the guise of advancing my discovery, only to destroy the very essence of my work. Our captors, a part of international security for global government, wanted nothing more than to exploit my discovery for their own gain. Revenge was the one thing I craved, the one thing that consumed me completely. It was an equation, a system of cause and effect I could almost predict. George Walsh had taken everything from me. My parents, murdered my work, destroyed my life in fragments of emotional turmoil. He deserved to vanish from existence. And in the stillness of my heart, I felt more certain that I could make that happen and get away with it. But I was no longer the same person I had been months ago. I was someone different, someone capable of far darker things than I had ever realized. And that terrified me. I felt weight of the pocket watch in my hand, like a leaden anchor, pulling me deeper into the darkness. Memories of my parents' screams echoed faintly in my mind, but I knew that if I let them take control, they would destroy me. The time travel device had given me power, yes, but power was a dangerous thing. As a physicist, I understood the delicate balance of energy and entropy. I knew that any small disturbance could lead to catastrophic consequences. Reality itself bending and breaking in ways I could not control. Emotions were overpowering my logic. Revenge was tempting, seductive even. It was a persistent force, creeping into my thoughts, pulling me back into the past, into the moments of pain and loss. It was intoxicating. I could almost taste it, feel it running through my veins. If I allowed it to consume me, I'd be no better than the very people I sought to destroy. I was at war with myself, my mind telling me to focus, to fight the urge for violence, but my body trembling with the desire to strike. My nails dug into my palms, a small anchor in the raging storm. I tried to breathe, to focus, but the thoughts were relentless. The mathematics of it all did not add up. I was trapped in a paradox of my own making. Every thought I had led to another, a series of equations that felt impossible to solve. Revenge would change everything, but I could not afford to lose control. If I did, I would make an irreversible mistake. Again, that would be truly brilliant, wouldn't it? Sleep offered no comfort, but a pattern emerged in the dreams that plagued me. They were not mine, not entirely. They were vivid, pulling me into a past that was not my own, into a time of great resistance and rebellion. The golden age of piracy, a period of defiance against oppressive forces, where violence and betrayal were everyday occurrences. I grasped onto that dream like a lifeline. Perhaps revenge was not my only option. Perhaps I could rewrite my own fate without destroying everything. However, the dark urge refused to be ignored. It whispered louder with every passing hour, its voice growing insistent and demanding. Revenge was cunning. It seeped into my bones, making it increasingly more difficult to think straight. It clawed at me, its claws like the jagged edges of a broken mirror. My hands convulsed. My heart raced. Every inch of me screamed for action. But I knew better. I was a scientist, after all. I understood systems, the way one small change could ripple outward and cause unintended consequences. Revenge was an unstable reaction. It would explode, and I would lose myself in the process. But I could not stop the storm inside of me. Time travel had never been attempted before. No one had ever successfully crossed the threshold between ages, and yet here I was, stuck in limbo, in a place where the boundaries of time blurred and twisted. I should have been focused, should have been calculating every detail of my destination, but instead, my mind was adrift. It was as if the chaos inside me had spilled into the very fabric of time itself, distorting my path. And then, just as the chaos threatened to take over, I felt it. A cold, icy hand of dissonance. It was me, or at least a version of me that I no longer recognized. This version of me was lost in the darkness, a person forged by pain and revenge, someone I was terrified of becoming. It was as if my own fear gripped my heart, pulling me away from the edge of destruction. I closed my eyes, fighting for control. I couldn't think clearly. The rage was suffocating, like a fear that threatened to consume me whole. I tried to remember what I knew about systems. Could I control the chaos? I thought of thermodynamics, of entropy, and the second law, that everything tended toward disorder. Was this my own collapse? Was I simply a part of a greater, inevitable breakdown? I clutched the pocket watch, the mechanism cold against my skin. The ticking, once a comforting sound, now felt like the ticking of a bomb. Time was slipping away, but I had to make my choice. The past was a tangled mess, and if I tried to correct it, if I tried to rewrite it, I might undo everything I had worked for, but revenge was too tempting. It pressed against me, a living, breathing thing. I could not escape it. It was inside me. And yet, there was something else. Hope. Hope had always been so distant, something I hadn't allowed myself to believe in for so long. But in that moment, in that fractured, chaotic space, I grasped it with my fingertips. It was a lifeline, pulling me away from the precipice of vengeance. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to hold on to that warmth, a flicker of it, faint but undeniable. Could it really be there, in the darkest recesses of my mind? I closed my eyes, listening to my breath, steadying myself. The time travel device was my escape, but it could also serve to be my salvation. I didn't have to destroy everything to fix my mistakes. I could choose a different path, one that didn't lead to annihilation. The warm glow of hope began to spread from my fingertips, a tiny spark that grew with each breath I took. The darkness that had been clawing at me started to retreat, fading like a bad dream. The rage that had been consuming me felt distant now, as if it no longer had a hold on me. I focused on the past, on the golden age of piracy, a time where resistance thrived, not for vengeance, but for something greater, freedom. A different kind of rebellion. I felt the now familiar pull of time travel as the world around me warped. My body shuddered, the vertigo setting in, but I held on to the flicker of hope. I could escape the grip of revenge. I could escape my fate and choose something else. The darkness around me deepened, but this time I was not afraid. The weight of my decision was immense, but the warmth of hope anchored me. The past was waiting, but this time I was not running toward destruction. I was running toward a new future. The above story ends, but the suspense and thrill have never stopped. Right here is another equally interesting story. Please continue listening. Bloodlines. The first time I noticed something was off, I was 13. It was a school night, and I got out of bed late in the night to sneak a soda from the fridge. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the television in the living room. It was unusual for anyone to be up this late. My dad sat in his chair with the light off, watching the late news. The headline at the bottom read, "The Nightshade Killer Strikes Again. 15 victims confirmed." I watched silently for a moment while the reporter talked about a lack of clues and how the police seemed to be baffled. I remember the way my father's lip twitched as he sipped his whiskey, almost like a smirk. He noticed me standing in the doorway, and in a blink, his expression softened, becoming familiar and warm. "Hey, champ, can't sleep?" he asked as he muted the TV and rose from his seat. I told myself I had imagined the smirk. I must have. The encounter stirred memories of hearing my dad coming and going at late hours. How closed off he could be at times, and how he would sidestep Mom's questions of where he was going and who he was with when they fought behind closed doors, thinking I couldn't hear. He was hiding something. A few weeks later, they had a huge fight. Mom accused Dad of having an affair, which he denied. Mom and I ended up leaving for a few months that summer to stay with my grandparents. Dad eventually convinced Mom he was not having any affairs, that his problem was with gambling, and he was getting help. I'm not sure if Mom totally believed him, but we did move back home, and things did seem to get better. The late-night outings stopped, and the tension at home faded with time. Eventually, the memory faded too. The killings had stopped, and the Nightshade Killer became an urban legend, the subject of true crime, podcasts, and late-night horror stories kids told at sleepovers and on camping trips. The police moved the case onto the cold pile, and most thought he had died or been locked up for some other crime. Then, when I was in my late 20s, they found another body. The same victim type, the same ritualistic markings, and the same precision. The Nightshade Killer was back. That night, I visited my dad for dinner. As soon as I stepped into the house, I noticed something was off. The house seemed cleaner than usual. I could smell bleach in the air, thick enough to sting my nose. My dad was his usual self, calm and collected, always in control. He explained the smell away as a laundry mishap. He was still not used to doing it after Mom passed last year. During dinner, we talked mostly about me. Dad wanted all the details of how my life was going, all that I was willing to provide anyway. He asked about my work, life in general, and if I was seeing anyone yet. That is when I saw it. A faint red stain on the cuff of his sleeve. I got a good look as he poured a glass of whiskey for himself. The sight stirred something in the back of my mind that kept me up that night. That stain wasn't wine. It wasn't ketchup. It was blood. I knew it was. I remember the smirk I needed proof. Real proof. The next day, I used my spare key to let myself in while Dad was out. My hands shook and felt more nervous than I expected. Not at the prospect of getting caught, but of the possibility of what I might find. The smell of bleach wasn't as strong, but it was accompanied by something else now. Something almost metallic. I made my way through the house systematically until I got to the basement door. It was locked. I don't remember the basement ever being locked. Using a bobby pin and a skill I picked up as a rebellious teenager, I clumsily picked the lock. The metallic smell hit me as the door opened. My stomach twisted as I descended the stairs, and the fluorescent light flickered to life overhead. The air was damp and cool, and as I reached the bottom and turned the corner, I saw them. Trophies. Photographs of women with terrified looks on their faces, and a date written on each one, neatly arranged on a workbench. Next to them, a stack of old newspaper clippings dating back to the first nightshade killings. In the far corner, a freezer with a padlock and a collection of knives laid out across the top, looking freshly cleaned. I didn't need to open the freezer. I already knew what I would find. A creak on the stairs made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come down here, champ." I turned slowly as Dad came around the stairs. His hands in his pockets, he watched me for a moment. His face showed no sign of fear at being found out, or anger that I had intruded. It was something more like patience, like he had been waiting for this moment my whole life. "It was you the entire time." My voice barely worked. I wanted to run and to throw up, but I couldn't move from that spot. Some sick part of me, something twisted and wretched in my blood, had to hear the word. I needed to hear him say them. "You killed them all?" "Yes." No hesitation, no remorse, just calm and collected as always, and merely stating a fact. "And now you have a choice to make." At that moment, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. My mouth went dry as I tried to swallow. I wasn't sure if I was afraid of him or of how much of him was in me. I felt my lip twitch almost involuntarily. Maybe I was afraid of the choice I already knew I would make. Let's continue with the next no less thrilling stories. The Rougarou. Raylan Stone was installing a strut on a Toyota when I burst into the Texaco station. I ducked under the lift, slipped in a patch of oil, and cracked my head on the garage floor. "Mais la, Delilah Jane, are you pining for a concussion?" The handsome Cajun scooped me up and set me on a stack of tires. He wiped grease off his hands and gently palpated the back of my head. "You're not bleeding, Cher, but there's a lump. You might have cracked your skull." Holding my throbbing head, I mumbled, "I'm just dizzy." "Why'd you bust in here like a rabid wolf was after you?" "Lucinda's missing." "Lucinda Defoe? Isn't she your cousin?" Yeah? Her foster mom said she didn't come home from the roller rink last night. That teenager's wild as a colt. This ain't the first time she's run off. That's why I've got to have my truck. A muscle vibrated in his lean jaw. It's not ready. Baton Rouge ain't bringing the new radiator until tomorrow. Then let me borrow something. Antoinette thinks that Mississippi River pirates got her. He threw back his head and laughed. Antoinette watches too much television. She swore that a UFO beamed Lucinda to Mars last year. And a few months ago, she told the sheriff that the Rougarou ate the girl. I shuddered, imagining the man-wolf. 8 feet tall, he had eyes like fire coals and teeth like a bear's. He hunted dogs and kids who wandered into the bayou. My headstrong cousin liked to sneak out there. Gambling with her life turned her on. Giving me the side eye, Raylan said in Cajun French, "Tonnerre mes chiens. Tell me you don't believe in the Rougarou." No, of course not. He's a legend, not real at all. Invented to scare bratty children. His lips quirked. Irritated that I hadn't fooled him, I squared my shoulders. I'm guessing that she's at the fish camp with Marcus. That's where she was last time. I need to bring her back. You're not going anywhere with a busted noggin. I fingered my skull and winced. It's sore, not busted. Have you met Marcus? Haven't had the pleasure. You're lucky. He's mean as a snapping turtle. Everybody swears he eats water moccasins and scorpions for breakfast. Imagine what he could do to a 16-year-old. Are you gonna lend me a vehicle or not? Sorry, I don't have a loaner. Muttering, I shoved myself off the tires and bumped into his hard chest. Steadying me, he smoothed a curl off my forehead. I leaned into his palm for an instant and then stepped back. My friends said he was crazy about me, but he'd never even stolen a kiss. Raylan Stone was a Southern gent, a throwback to the days when a man left a calling card and asked your daddy if he could court you. I didn't have a daddy. Neither did Lucinda. I licked my lips and tried again. My cousins had nothing but bad breaks since her parents died. If she's with Marcus, she's with a critter as dangerous as the Rougarou. He sanded the beard stubble on his jaw with the heel of his hand. Look, I'd drive you if I could. But the mayor's coming to pick up the Toyota. I've got to finish the struts and rotate the tires by 5 o'clock. Tell her it's an emergency. Narrowing his dark eyes, he stepped forward and caught my chin. He stood rock still, his warm breath wafting over my face. I trembled, thinking he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to. Instead, he whispered, I was a medic in the army, not a neurologist. But I'd say you dodged that concussion. Your pupils are equal and react to the light. That's a hard head you've got, taking a hit like that on concrete. Yeah, my head's not made out of paper mache. I'm fine. Prove it. Let me see you walk the scene. in the floor. Hoping he would relent about driving me, I traversed the crack like a tightrope walker, turned, and came back. My head hurt, but I didn't wobble. Satisfied, his brows drawn in a scowl, he picked up a box wrench and twirled it through his fingers. All right, Cher, you win. I'll let you take old Jeb, go to the fish camp, and then come straight back. Deal, old Jeb? Oh la la. Raylan's rebuilt 1940 International Harvester was a thing of power and beauty. He didn't let anybody drive that truck. Maybe he was crazy about me. I resisted a sudden urge to kiss him. Go wait in the portico, Delilah Jane. I'll bring him around. Hurry before I change my damn mind. Its wiper blades flip-flopping over the divided windshield. The old truck rumbled into the portico a few minutes later. Raylan hopped out and cocked his fists on his narrow hips. You ever drove a double-wheel rear end? No, but it can't be all that different from my Ram truck. Different enough. You lock up the brakes, you'll skip the tires, and the rear end'll get away from you. Don't drive old Jeb over 40. Heavy rain's fixing to start. I'll drive him 10 under at all times. I swear. That'll be a first. You doing the speed limit. I put my foot on the wet running board and slipped. I fell backwards. As Raylan cupped my hiney to catch me, I heard him draw a sharp breath. Careful, darlin'. It's slippery when wet. Dieu. He slid his hands to my waist and boosted me onto the seat. I stole a look in the rearview mirror. Red cheeks, lawsy, an impish twinkle in his eyes. He said, I dropped a green diamond 214 cubic inch engine into old Jeb last month. Feel the vibration? That calfskin seat's kind of tickly, ain't it? Yes. The engine was vibrating a place I'd never admit to in 1,000 years. Or maybe it was a visceral memory of Raylan's hands on my tail. Oh la la, with hot pepper on top. The engine ain't broke in yet, so keep an eye on the tachometer as you run through the gears. Don't rev him up, you hear? I'll treat him like a baby possum. He snorted and shook his head. You don't have to go that far. Hey, let me adjust the rearview mirror for you. The dang thing likes to stick. As he leaned across me, his fingertips skimmed my thigh. He turned his head and gazed at me for several breathless seconds. I saw a muscle throb in his cheek and heat flash in his eyes. He positioned the mirror and stood back. Flushed from head to toe, I stared at the gauges as though I'd never seen anything so fascinating. Okay, see if Lucinda's out there, and then head straight back here. If she ain't at the fish camp, the sheriff can send the Cajun Navy after Antoinette's river pirates. I chuckled as he shut the door. Cranking the window down, I was about to wisecrack that he looked like a daddy sending his truck off to kindergarten. But he gazed at me with such solemnity that the words died in my throat. Watch your back, darlin'. I don't believe in your Rougarou. But if something were to happen to you, nothing's gonna happen, and he's not my Rougarou. I forced a laugh. That smelly old monster would make an awful pet. Looking even more solemn, he placed his warm hand on the back of my neck. You sure you know how to drive a big truck? Does a duck wear waterproof underwear? Watch me. His fingers tightened. I'd like to watch you, and not in duck drawers. Damn, woman, you wear that truck like Victoria's Secret. Who? I flushed again, thrilled. Maybe Raylan Stone wasn't the gentleman I'd taken him for. Buckle up. There ain't a shoulder harness, but the lap belt will keep you from going anywhere. Not that you're gonna hit nothing, right? I touched 2 fingers to my eyebrow. Right. Don't worry about me. Frowning, he churned his hair with both hands. Quit worrying, Raylan. I'm calm as a clam. Calm as a clam fixing to be deep fried. I'll be back in 2 hours. I pushed in the clutch, eased into first gear, and drove into the rain. It wouldn't be long until dark. I was on the highway near the swamp when a lightning bolt snapped out of the clouds. It unleashed a torrent of rain. Within minutes, the deep ditches on either side of the highway overflowed. Rooster tails sprayed out of old Jeb's fenders and hit the windshield. The window fogged up. Blinded, I stopped to clear the glass with my sleeve. I glimpsed movement out of the corner of my eye. A huge black thing lurched out of the swamp and fixed a pair of glowing red eyes on me. The Rougarou. I jammed the gas pedal to the floorboard, not looking back, not looking aside, looking only through the foggy windshield and screaming, screaming, screaming. As I shifted into second, the rear end broke loose. I jerked the wheel in the direction of the skid and felt the truck catch up. But then I skidded the opposite way and overcorrected. Storm water snatched old Jeb toward the ditches as we reeled back and forth. Waves exploded over the hood. Steam boiled out of the engine, black smoke pouring out of its stacks. A dump truck appeared in the mirror. Roaring like a bear, it smashed into us. Old Jeb spun a 360 and sailed into the ditch. Sudden deceleration. My hips snapped against the lap belt. My knees slammed into the dashboard. My forehead bounced off the steering wheel. Dark water rose over the hood and sprayed in around the windows and door seals. It boiled out of the dash, the air vents, the gas pedal, the floorboards. The ammeter glowed bright red, and then the turbid water snuffed it out. The cab submerged. Locked in a cold, black tomb, I fought to unbuckle the seatbelt. Water rose to my chin. Choking, I struggled for air. White-hot knives stabbed my chest. I heard a dog barking, and then a gruff voice. Get to the air pocket, or you'll become a ghost like me. The seatbelt buckle popped open. I pushed off the steering wheel and hit my head on the roof, found the air pocket, sucked sharp, terrified gulps of oxygen. Old Jeb groaned and nosed deeper into the ditch. I fumbled for the door handle. The door wouldn't open. It couldn't. The water pressure outside was too great. The door wouldn't open until the pressure equalized. That would be when the cab was full of water. By then, I would have drowned. Raylan Stone would tow the truck out and stare at me in disapproval. I'd promised not to hurt old Jeb, dragging in a lungful of air. I ducked underwater and tried to grab the window crank. The freezing water struck my head like a hammer and knocked the air out of my lungs. I caromed to the ceiling and hit my head. I can't do it. It's too deep. It's too cold. I can't get out. I'm gonna die. Something appeared in the darkness. Brown fur, claws, teeth. I felt the Rougarou touching me, breathing on me. I screamed in mindless terror, rolled down the window. Golden eyes, a white bib, and speckled paws appeared. It was the little brown dog that I'd lost to the Rougarou when I was 5. Barks pushed my head underwater and guided my frozen hand to the crank. Together, we rolled the window down. Get out, Delilah Jane. Go. My face hit the ditch bank. It was too close, choking off escape. I was underwater. My lungs burned. I had to take a breath. If I did, I would drown. If I didn't, I would suffocate. I would die no matter what I did. I'm gonna bite you. Sudden, sharp pain in my butt. I spasmed, twisted, heard my scream carry away my last breath. My head broke out of the water. I clawed the bank, shoved my feet against the truck, and crawled onto the flooded road, coughed, sucked cold wind. Where was my dog? The rain stopped, as though someone had flipped a switch. Low in the northeast, the wolf moon was waxing full. Tonight, the Rougarou would reach his zenith of power, its diesel engine roaring. The dump truck crested the hill. Tires squalled, and a shadow rushed at me. I saw the head of a wolf mounted on the massive, black-furred body of a man. I turned to run. The Rougarou stabbed my back with his claws and sank his canines into my neck. Sterile white room. White blanket trapping my legs. Panicked, I started kicking. Calm down, Delilah Jane. Look at me, gripping my shoulder. Raylan Stone stroked my cheek. His shirt bore a picture of a diesel truck and a caption, "Black smoke, don't mean it's broke." I visualized the dump truck in my mirror, smoke billowing from the stacks. Don't let it get me. Shh, baby. You're in the emergency room. Nothing's gonna get you, darling. But a frightening kaleidoscope whirled in my mind. Lucinda was inside the submerged truck. As I struggled to free her, The Rougarou surfaced from the dark water and tore out her throat. I screamed and screamed. I heard Raylan's low-voiced command. "Open your eyes, Cher. It's just a dream. That's all it is. You got a concussion when you smacked your head in the garage. The Rougarou's killing my cousin." No. The sheriff picked her up at the fish camp. "You had a bad dream, baby. Just a bad dream. It's over." I covered my face and wept. The mechanic gathered me into his arms and began humming a Cajun melody, his vibrato flowing in rich, warm waves out of his chest into mine. As I settled into him, he whispered, "I won't let anything happen to you. I swear. You're safe, love. Safe." He cradled me in his left arm and gently pushed the hair out of my eyes. Cut like banjo strings, his powerful arms were colored in ink. Tattooed on his right wrist was a knife, twin arrows, and "De oppresso liber." Is that Latin? Shh, don't talk. But I needed to make sure I was alive, that what I was seeing was real, that I wasn't dreaming anymore. I touched his wrist, warm and strong, pulsing, real. I traced my finger over the tattoo and felt him tremble. "What's the tattoo for, Raylan?" "It's the Special Forces crest. From oppression, we will liberate them." Like he'd liberated me from the nightmare. So I didn't wreck old Jeb? His eyebrows shot up like question marks. "I don't let anybody drive my truck." "Oh, wait, you drove him in your dream." Heaving a shaky sigh, I laced my fingers through his. It was so real, so awful. "Will you take me home?" "Later, darling. We're gonna stay and keep you awake. Concussion protocol." His eyes twinkling, his lips quirked in the mischievous grin I was beginning to love. "The next time you come sliding into my garage, I'll outfit you with a crash helmet." Smiling, I snuggled into his arms. Raylan Stone was exactly the gentleman I'd dreamed he was. Maybe tomorrow I'd steal a kiss, and the next story will be told right away. Please listen carefully. Flight 24/7. It's strange how the most pivotal moments of our lives often begin in the most mundane places. For me, it's the cramped bathroom of Trans-Pacific Flight 1247, 35,000 feet above sea level, when the first tremor rips through the cabin. At this moment, I'm just another passenger with a spike of anxiety from the turbulence we just experienced, making the smart faucet in the bathroom require all of my focus, completely oblivious to the fact that fate has begun its countdown. Why does everything always come down to timing? 5 minutes earlier, and I would have been safely strapped into PODEC, connected to my assigned neural interface, already synced to the emergency protocols. The bathroom mirror catches my reflection as the cabin lights shift from institutional LED 2A to a pulsing amber hue. My heart stutters. I know that color. How people used to fly in these things before EES came around, I'll never understand. They were basically flying in an air-conditioned metal tub with wings. Everyone that flies on Trans-Pacific knows that color. Catastrophic system failure and the emergency evacuation system has begun. In the old days, this would have meant certain death. But in 2147, commercial aircrafts have evolved from their fragile predecessors. The Airbus Quantum Aeroline doesn't just fly. They adapt, transform, and when necessary, shed their parts like a snake shedding its skin. I lunge for the door. One of the only remaining places on board that doesn't have its own EES protocols. My fingers slipping on the handle, slick from the soapy water that just cleansed my skin of any dirt, germs, and other microorganisms that I collected while on board. My savior might be my demise, I say out loud to myself, spurring myself into hurried movements, wiping my hands down my shirt, hoping to gain more traction on the door handle. Fuck! I scream as the handle and door refuse to move. The status light begins blinking an infuriating red as the message, "Door locked for catastrophic system failure protocol," scrolls across the ticker above the door lock. What usually tells passengers which water closet is in use is now taunting me with my impending fate. The first automated announcement over the intercom sends ice racing through my veins. My lungs are straining against my rib cage as I try to calm my panicked breathing. Attention, passengers. CSFP number 7 has been initiated. Please remain in your seats, in your designated pod. Quantum separation will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. The word echoes around in my head, like a ball bouncing through a pinball machine. Under normal circumstances, that would be plenty of time for the pods to detach cleanly, their individual gravitational fields engaging as they descended safely to the nearest emergency landing zone. But I'm not in my pod, trapped in my tin can coffin, in the one section of the plane designed to stay with the main hull, the section that goes down with the ship. My mind whirs as I try to remember the schematics video they played at the beginning of our flight, the ones no one ever pays attention to because yada yada, remain in your pods and stay secured to your neural link for the most secure flight, yada yada. Trying not to think of how my sister had mocked me for even watching the video. You're such a germaphobe, I am sure you can make it one flight without washing your hands. It's only an hour-and-a-half flight, Nova, so she had drug my name out just to grate on my nerves. This bathroom is just between PRDRZ and PRDD. Only a sealed door and 20 feet separating me from my salvation. The neural link in my travel band is already buzzing frantically, trying to sync my pod. Another tremor, stronger this time. From the tiny crevice of a bathroom window, I catch a glimpse of PA silently detaching, its edges alight with blue-green fire as its gravitational field adjusts to the atmosphere around it. Beautiful, yet terrifying. 2 minutes until quantum separation. The second automated announcement sounds over the intercom. 2 minutes. Think. 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 There has to be a way out of here. My fingers trace the door's edge, feeling for there. A manual release panel, disguised as a part of the trim. The kind of backup system engineers include, but never expect anyone to actually use. I dig my nails into the seam and pull. The panel snaps off with a crack that sends me stumbling backwards. Behind the handle is a simple mechanical lever, a startling piece of analog technology for this quantum aeroline. I pull it down, instinctually throwing my body against the door. It bursts open with a pneumatic gasp, nearly sending me sprawling onto the floor. When my feet hit the smart polymer floor, I send up a silent prayer of thanks. The material has already started transforming, preparing for atmospheric re-entry, its texture shifting from a sleek, aesthetic design feature to a practical, high-traction surface designed for an emergency. In the distance, I hear the hydraulic hiss of PRD beginning its separation from the mainframe. That's when I see it. My salvation. Odyssey. I press my neural link band against Odyssey's access panel, desperately hoping it will override the security protocols. Each buzz from the band feels like a rock dropping in my stomach. It rejects me once, twice. The authentication failures flashing across the display screen in angry red letters. 1 minute until quantum separation. 1 minute until quantum separation. The automated announcement taunts me over and over again. Panicking, I run my fingers over the screen, looking for anything to try. When in doubt, restart right? The thought flits through my mind. I use my fingers to pry open the panel cover, revealing a simple, glowing red button. Such an archaic solution, hiding in plain sight. A physical reset in a world of AI and neural commands. Slamming my hand against it, I pray to whatever gods might be listening that the oldest trick in the tech world will work one more time. 30 seconds until quantum separation. The announcement washes over me like a bucket of ice water. The walls of Odyssey begin to vibrate as the clamps begin to initiate their release sequence. The panel flickers from red to amber. The reset seems to have done something, not a full access grant, but a system reboot that might give me enough time. Emergency reset detected. System reinitialization in progress. The words flash across the access panel. I run. The door to PRD slides halfway open, then freezes, caught between evacuation and reboot protocols. forcing my body through the gap, ignoring the sharp parts of the doorframe, cutting into my clothes and skin, willing my body to get as small as possible. The system blares warnings through the pod speakers. Unauthorized entry detected. Security breach in PODC. Inside, the other passengers stare at me with a mixture of shock and confusion. The woman they had written off as collateral damage amongst the wreckage of this impending crash, defying both protocol and probability. The flight attendant assigned to our POD makes to move towards me, then hesitates as another announcement cuts through the chaos. 10 seconds until quantum separation, I dive into my seat. The neural interface recognizes my presence as soon as my hand hits the armrest. The familiar tingle of the neural link washes over me as the pod's systems integrate my biometrics into their separation calculations. For a moment, I think I can feel the algorithms adjusting, compensating for my return. My body sags with relief as my harness straps me into the pod. Did I damn us all with my return? Just when you think all the weird stuff has been told, the next story will make you think again. Reality checked. Maggie stared out the kitchen window, her brow knitted in quiet contemplation as she waited for her coffee to finish brewing. The sun poured through the window, warm and radiant. Yet something felt off. It had rained throughout the night. She recalled the rhythmic pitter-patter against her bedroom window and the wind wailing through the trees. The forecast had called for more storms well into late afternoon. However, outside, the world looked untouched, as if the night's downpour had never happened. She recalled having drinks with her best friends from college last night at the new upscale lounge downtown. Lori had been eager to check out the exclusive rooftop bar, but the rain had forced them to stay inside. Instead, they gathered in one of the lounge's sleek, dimly lit sections, sipping mojitos and catching up. Lori had always dreamed of becoming a corporate attorney, and after years of relentless studying and grueling internships, she had finally landed a position at one of Pittsburgh's top law firms earlier this year. It was all she had ever wanted, and from the way she spoke about it, the long hours and high stakes didn't faze her in the slightest. Sammy and Chloe also seemed to have settled comfortably into their dream careers. Sammy, with her sharp wit and boundless creativity, was making a name for herself in marketing, crafting campaigns for major brands. Chloe, whom she had known since 3rd grade and always the most compassionate of the group, had pursued a career in healthcare, working as a pediatric nurse, the job she had dreamed of since childhood. As Maggie sat there, she couldn't help but wonder if she was the only one still searching for a sense of purpose, trapped in a routine she couldn't escape. Suddenly, the coffee pot beeped, a sharp, cheerful sound, as if proudly announcing the completion of its task. The abrupt noise jolted Maggie from her thoughts, pulling her away from the window. With a sigh, she grabbed the pot and poured the steaming coffee into her oversized pit mug. She and her friends had bought matching mugs from the university shop, a sentimental keepsake to mark their transition from students to University of Pittsburgh alumni. Back then, they had imagined themselves stepping into bright, promising careers, proudly flaunting their school spirit in their new offices. But as Maggie wrapped her fingers around the familiar ceramic, she couldn't ignore the nagging truth. Her future hadn't turned out the way she once envisioned. Maggie took a sip of her coffee and immediately winced at the bitterness, the sharp taste jolting her from her distracted thoughts. She'd forgotten to add the creamer. Heading toward the refrigerator, a realization settled over her. It was Sunday, grocery day. With a resigned sigh, she set down her mug, shuffled to her bedroom to change, then grabbed her purse and keys and headed out the door. The moment she stepped outside, the air was warm and rich with the scent of sun-soaked earth and blooming wildflowers. No trace of petrichor, no lingering dampness on the pavement. It was as if the storm she so vividly remembered had never happened at all. Maggie swallowed, her throat dry and tight. Something was off. She could feel it in her bones. An uncanny sense that the world had shifted on its axis while she slept. She glanced across the street and noticed her neighbors gathered on their lawns, laughing and chatting as if it were a holiday. Odd, she thought. But what unsettled her most was Mr. Burns. The older man was usually a storm cloud of irritation, no matter the day. He'd spent his life working at the same furniture store his great-great-grandfather had built, forever grumbling about long hours and slow employees. Just yesterday, after another exhausting Saturday shift, his voice had carried across the street, complaining about sluggish junior workers, while his wife, Mrs. Burns, stood by the door, nodding in passive agreement, with an umbrella in hand, as he stomped into the house. But today, he was all smiles, chatting with the Morgans and the Wilsons, laughing as if he didn't have a single care in the world. Just then, Mr. Burns looked over, spotted her, and waved. "Good morning, Maggie." "Good morning, Mr. Burns," Maggie said, her voice tinged with bewilderment. He grinned and called out, "When you get a chance this week, stop by the store. I'll give you a discount on any furniture you want. We just received an investment, and things are really looking up." "Oh, wow, that's wonderful," Maggie replied, trying to mask the confusion on her face. Mr. Burns had never spoken to her before. A grunt or a quick nod was all she ever got. It was always Mrs. Burns who was the social one. Maggie's skin prickled. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she climbed into her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Something definitely isn't right, she thought. First, the weather seemed odd, and now her neighbor was acting like an entirely different person. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I didn't sleep well, and the mojitos from last night aren't sitting well with me. But no matter how she tried to rationalize it, every instinct screamed that something was undeniably wrong. The drive to the grocery store was oddly surreal. Streets that normally peppered with Sunday morning traffic were unsettlingly quiet. The few cars she passed moved at an unhurried pace, their drivers smiling and waving as if caught up in some unspoken festivity. Pedestrians strolled along the sidewalks with a light-hearted spring in their step, while dogs pranced happily alongside their humans, tails wagging as if the entire world was enveloped in an unfamiliar sense of joy. As she pulled into the parking lot of Greenfield's Market, her unease deepened. The vast stretch of asphalt, usually packed with cars on a Sunday morning, was nearly empty. Only a handful of vehicles sat scattered across the grocery store lot, gleaming under the strangely intense sunlight like polished gems. She cautiously eased into a parking space near the entrance and cut the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, fingers still resting on the steering wheel as she scanned her surroundings, trying to steady her thoughts. "What is going on?" she whispered to herself. Finally, after calming herself, she grabbed her purse and stepped out of the car. The door closed shut behind her, the sound echoing across the parking lot, unnervingly loud against the surrounding stillness. As she approached the store, the automatic doors slid open with an almost too cheerful whoosh, releasing a wave of cool, conditioned air. The familiar fluorescent glow spilled onto the pavement, blinding her momentarily, forcing her to blink rapidly to adjust her eyes. Her gaze landed on the store employees gathered at the entrance, their faces lit with excitement as they chatted and laughed. They held a large banner that read, "Welcome to Greenfield's Market. Happy grand reopening. A new beginning awaits." A grand reopening? This surprised Maggie. She had been at this store just a few days ago, and there had been no sign of renovations, no announcements, no changes, nothing to suggest something like this was happening. She forced a smile at the employees as she walked past, gripping her purse handle tightly. Grabbing a cart, she headed toward the produce section, trying once again to shake off the uneasiness rising in her chest. Maggie quickly grabbed her usual grocery items and a few snacks, hurrying toward the register. Despite the small number of customers, the store hummed with an unusual liveliness. As she made her way through the aisles, everything seemed different. The store fully stocked the shelves with fresh produce, neatly arranged in vibrant displays. Maggie couldn't believe what was happening. This wasn't just a grand reopening. It felt like an entirely new store. Yet, everything looked exactly as it always had. As she fumbled with her wallet, she heard someone call her name. "Maggie, so nice to see you today. How are you?" It was Jen from her yoga class. Maggie barely managed a smile as she turned to face her. "I'm good. Just doing a little shopping," she replied, her voice flat with a forced smile. "Oh, I totally get it." Jen chuckled. "I'm getting ready for the week too. Can't wait. You won't believe it, but I got a promotion to regional manager last Thursday. Can you believe it? I'm doing what I always wanted." Maggie froze. "Wait, what? I thought you said you hated your job. You even told me you were looking for something else, even if they offered you a promotion." Jen placed a hand on Maggie's shoulder, her face glowing with excitement. "Not anymore. It's my dream job now, Maggie. Isn't it amazing? It feels like a new beginning." Maggie felt a wave of nausea rise in her stomach. Her head spun, and her heart began to race. This didn't feel right. How could everything change so suddenly? The world felt like it was wrapped in some strange, happy haze. How was everyone so cheerful? They continued sharing a little small talk and hugged goodbye just as the cashier finished ringing up Maggie's items. But Maggie's mind was miles away. As if on autopilot, she barely noticed the total as she grabbed her bags and hurried out. Slipping into her car, she leaned back in the seat, feeling disoriented. What was going on? I need caffeine," she muttered, hoping the words would ground her. She headed to the local cafe, desperate for a mocha to shake the eerie feeling that had taken over her, hoping it would wake her up, both literally and figuratively. As Maggie stepped into the cafe, she was taken aback by the atmosphere. It wasn't the usual hectic, impatient crowd, with long lines and customers in a rush. Instead, the cafe was filled with a relaxed energy. People were chatting casually, laughing, and smiling as they sipped their drinks. Then, out of nowhere, one of her co-workers from the hotel, Tim, walked in. His face lit up with a big grin. Their eyes met, and he waved enthusiastically as he made his way toward her, skillfully weaving through customers who were leaving. "Maggie, how are you?" Tim called out, his voice full of excitement. "I'm hanging in there," Maggie replied, still trying to make sense of the strange energy in the air as he joined the line behind her. Tim worked as a bartender at the hotel and was also an aspiring musician, playing local gigs with his band. "Maggie, you won't believe it." Tim's eyes were sparkling as he leaned in closer. "I just signed a huge deal." "What? No way. Congratulations, Tim," Maggie exclaimed, her surprise matching the excitement in his voice. Tim couldn't contain his joy. "Yeah, My band got signed to a record label yesterday. It's my dream, and it's happening. Maggie shouted along with him, her mind still on guard. As Maggie picked up her mocha and exchanged goodbyes with Tim, she slowly made her way to the cafe door, still trying to process what she'd just heard. She was genuinely happy for him, but it felt like everyone's life was suddenly falling perfectly into place. Everyone except hers. She stepped outside into the warm air, the cafe's artificial ambiance fading behind her. As her foot hit the pavement and the fresh air brushed her face, a shiver ran through her, a silent reminder that something was wrong. The streets remained unnervingly serene. Everywhere she looked, people seemed to be exactly where they were meant to be. As she drove home, the familiar scene mirrored the one she had seen on her way to the store. She passed a man sitting on a bench, sketching in a notebook, his face radiating quiet contentment. A woman jogged by, her expression one of pure determination, as if every step brought her closer to her passion. Even the baristas at the cafe earlier seemed to move in perfect harmony, clearly in their element. It was as if the world had shifted into some perfect version of itself, where everyone had found their calling. Maggie's stomach tightened as she pulled into her driveway, the weight of the day settling in. The laughter, the smiles, the overwhelming sense of satisfaction. It all felt surreal and too perfect. She quickly collected her groceries and rushed into her apartment, her haven from the unsettling aura of perfection that seemed to envelop everyone around her. How could everyone else be so content, so perfectly aligned with their passions, while she felt like she was just existing? The world outside her window seemed too vibrant, too flawless. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like a carefully crafted facade, one that taunted her with its perfection, mocking her unfulfilled aspirations. After putting away the groceries, she glanced out the window and noticed the sky had darkened. Was it that late already? The day had passed in a blur. With a sigh, she turned her attention to getting her uniform ready for work. She mentally ran through her usual Monday routine. Oh, that's right, she reminded herself. I need to meet with Mr. Carrollson about booking the VIP hall for this week's seminar. Since the large banquet hall is undergoing emergency renovations. Are you happy, Maggie? The thought surfaced unexpectedly. Is this really what you want? 2 years from now? 5? 10? The questions lingered, unsettling and impossible to ignore. No, I'm not happy, she whispered at first, then repeated louder. I'm not happy. I'm a 29-year-old front office supervisor, stuck in a monotonous routine, she cried out, her voice breaking as tears spilled down her cheeks. Her voice trembled with frustration as she continued, her emotions pouring out unchecked. "This isn't what I wanted. This isn't the life I dreamed of." She dropped to the floor, fists tightly clenched, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with every breath. "My dreams, my life, everyone around me is thriving, doing what they love, and I'm just stuck." The realization crushed her. The contrast between her stagnant reality and the world's perfect harmony pressing in like an unbearable weight. Seeing her friends last night had left her feeling small, inadequate. They had all progressed into their ideal careers. And when the conversation had focused on her, she attempted to joke and dismiss it with a nonchalant, "Oh, I just changed direction." But the truth was harder to admit, even to herself. Somewhere along the way, ambition had quietly given way to stability. The drive she once had, the fire that pushed her forward, had dimmed, replaced by routine and practicality. And now, as she neared 30, she woke each morning with a dull, persistent ache of regret, haunted by the question, why had I just simply settled for this life? She had long since convinced herself that she was fine, that comfort and security were enough. But were they? Seeing her friends thrive, their eyes alight with passion for the things they loved, had stirred something restless inside her. Do you keep going like this? Waking up every day to the same boring routine, letting time slip through your fingers? Or do you finally take a stand, make a change, and pursue the life and career you truly want? The thought gave her chills. Change was terrifying, but an unfulfilled life was worse. If she didn't decide now, would she still be here years from now, trapped in the same cycle, suffocating under the weight of what-ifs? She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. The choice was hers. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to take the steps necessary to make the change. Maggie felt the weight of the day finally lift, the uneasiness that had clung to her dissipating. As she climbed into bed, a sense of determination settled over her. She was ready to embrace change, to carve out a future she truly wanted. Soon after she drifted to sleep, a loud, thunderous boom jolted her awake. Her eyes snapped open, blinking rapidly as she tried to gather her bearings. Rain pounded against the window, the storm outside mirroring the confusion swirling inside her. Half asleep, she reached for her phone. The screen lit up. 5:34 a.m. Sunday. Squinting, she frowned. Wait, Sunday? Did I read that right? She gasped, sitting up quickly, her heart racing. That couldn't be right. She had just lived through an entire day. She had gone shopping, talked to Jen, seen Tim, struggled with her emotions. How could it possibly be Sunday? Morning again. Scrambling for answers, she lunged for the TV remote and turned it on. The menu flashed across the screen. Sunday, 5:35 a.m. Her pulse roared in her ears. Oh, my goodness. Was it all just a dream? She whispered, her mind racing to make sense of it. A breathless, incredulous laugh escaped her. It was all just a dream. A weird, unsettling dream. Yet, as the initial shock settled, another thought took its place. It had felt so real, so vivid, like she had actually lived it. But more than that, it had forced her to confront the very things she had been avoiding. Her doubts, her fears, and her regrets. Seeing her friends had been the catalyst, but the dream had been the wake-up call. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't merely just a dream. Maybe it was a sign to stop waiting for the world to change for her. There's still time to pursue her dreams and embrace new beginnings. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be exciting. The above story has ended. Let's listen to the next story. Lost Hope. January 20th, 2025. Entry 1. It all happened so fast. All I could grab was my journal and a few pens. Alarms began blaring, and Dad rushed me. Mom and David down into a bunker? I don't know when we got a bunker or why, but it was deep under our house. It's spooky down here. One light source in the center of the room. Only 2 mattresses. And the rest of the space is full of Rougarous and jugs of water. I'm not sure how long we're going to be down here, so I figured journaling would be fun, though no one's answering my questions. Dad looks more serious than usual. He's been checking his pocket watch since we got here. Mom hasn't stopped pacing around, and David the deadbeat sat right on a mattress when we got down here. I don't want to be the only kid down here, so hopefully it only lasts a few days. January 23rd, 2025. Entry 2. The alarms and sirens from above finally stopped today. They made it hard to sleep, but it wasn't like it was easy to sleep in the first place. The beds were made for a kid half my size, and me and Mom had to share, so it was cramped. I still don't know why we are down here, but it's looking like it's going to be a little longer than a few days. It smells down here. The hole we potty in is deep, but the smell still sneaks up and fills the room with stench. And I'm not a fan of the food. I preferred the terrible food we got from the middle school. Then these cans. I wonder what my friends are doing. I miss them. January 28th, 2025. Entry 3. I hear people above. They sound sick and like they need help. Bangs and booms, groaning and wheezing. These sounds echoing through the bunker. But Dad says we can't help them. But if they're outside, why are we trapped in here? Also, David keeps looking at me funny. I don't like it. It ruins our card games. February 1st, 2025. Entry 4. I would have been such a great weather girl. I was always jealous of the ladies on TV. They were so pretty. But I can always guess the weather in the bunker. A high chance of inhaling bodily fumes, followed by boredom for the entire day. Stay safe, folks. It looks like this has no mention of ending anytime soon. No time soon. February 3rd, 2025. Entry 5. I got curious. This bunker didn't just appear. Dad must have built it. And that means he knew something. Knew this was coming. Why didn't he warn us? He has a small leather journal. Keeps it tucked inside his blazer pocket. I know I shouldn't, but I need to see what's inside. February 7th, 2025. Entry 6. I started bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I just kept crying and crying. My mom was trying to comfort and explain what was happening, but I thought I was dying. It didn't help that David kept looking at the stain on my pants. I was so embarrassed. I hate him. I hate having to be around him, and he won't stop looking at me. I wish I could just vanish. February 8th, 2025. Entry 7. I stayed up while everyone was sleeping. Dad doesn't sleep with his blazer on, so I was able to grab the journal and look through it. None of it made sense, though. There were just symbols scribbled all through the journal, but I've seen him writing in it. Why draw these symbols? What does it mean? I also think David caught me snooping, because when I walked over to his and Dad's bed, he was shifting around. If he tells I don't know what Dad will do. February 10th, 2025. Entry 8. David never said anything about the journal, so I think I'm in the clear. I'm becoming direly bored. David sits on his bed all day. Mom keeps replaying solitaire, and Dad is just checking his watch and journaling. No conversation is killing me. There's nothing new, no fresh air, and I never know if it's nighttime or not. If this is survival, is it even worth it? February 10th, 2025. Entry 9. I climbed to the top of the ladder to see if I could hear anything. I almost fell down because the ladder was old and the bars shifted. That fall could have been really bad. Most of the noises from above had stopped, and so it's just been silence. But when I pressed my ear to the hatch, I could feel vibrations, almost like a buzzing, like a wasp. There's still a world out there, I think. February 12th, 2025. Entry 9. I asked Dad about the buzzing, since now it's loud enough to be slightly heard from in the bunker. He, of course, didn't answer me, but he looked concerned by me asking. I couldn't take it. He had just stared at the hatch and then gave me his pocket watch. February. So much has happened. I lost my pens, so I couldn't write anything. It all feels so frozen. Nothing is moving anymore. Nothing's the same. My mind has run out of thoughts. The noises above are muffled. The only thing I feel is my heart bumping in my chest. Dad stopped checking his watch. He no longer writes anymore. I miss showering. My body is so dirty, even though I scrub so much. No matter how hard I try, the dirt won't come off. I catch my dad looking at the ceiling every day now. He's probably thinking what we both have been thinking this entire time. Is it safe to go up yet? He always looks scared whenever the thought crosses his mind. I can see it. His dread of what's to come. Why won't he tell me? Is it so terrible? Maybe I should find out for myself. It would be better than being in this casket. I'm tired of soup. I'm so tired. I want him to hug me. I want a hug so bad. It's been so long since I've been hugged. But I can't. I can't accept his comfort. It's hurting him to know he can't help me. A hug from Mom would've. She gave the best hugs. The buzzings never stopped before. So many continuous days with that buzzing in my ear. It's finally gone. Something changed. I have to take this chance. Dad would try to stop me if he knew. I have to do it now while he's asleep. I know you're reading this now, Dad. I love you. I wasn't strong enough. Forgive me. We think it's over, but in fact, it's just begun. The next story will thrill you in a completely different way. The edge of a moment. With squealing tires, the bus slowly came to a stop, its doors groaning open. Abby's first step after the long journey felt weak. Her shoes crunched in the snow as she looked around and slung her bag over her shoulder, her breath curling in the crisp December air. The familiar sight of her childhood town, a quiet corner of North Carolina, had hardly changed in the years she'd been away. Christmas lights flickered in the windows of the small brick houses, and a gentle dusting of snow clung to the evergreens lining the main street. Home, she thought, although it hadn't been a home to her for years, and it certainly lost that feeling long ago. She was simply here to spend the holidays with her mother, celebrate her birthday, and finally take a deep breath after years of grueling studies. But as she adjusted the strap of her duffel bag, she collided with someone. Hard. The road was slick with fresh snow, and Abby's boots failed to find purchase. She slipped, her arms flailing as gravity yanked her down. She hit the ground with a thud, snow seeping into her coat. Ow, she muttered, wincing. Before she could move, a pair of strong hands reached out to help her up. You okay? The voice was warm, concerned. Abby looked up. Irritation flickered through her until her brain caught up to what just happened. She froze. The man before her was impossibly familiar. His sharp blue eyes, the dimple in his cheek, as he frowned. It was as if she were staring at one of the few old photographs she kept of her father, Luke, a man she never knew. Her father who left her and her mom so soon after Abby was born. It couldn't be. This man looked no older than 30. Her father, if he were alive, would be nearing 60. "Are you okay?" the man asked again, still with a firm grip on her shoulders, as if she might collapse again if he let go. Abby struggled to find words. I think so. Let me get you a coffee. That'll help." Unable to object, and with her thoughts spinning, she found herself following him into a small coffee shop she didn't recognize. Was this new? Had she just never noticed it before? The place had an old-fashioned charm, with a jukebox humming softly in the corner, and a menu written in looping cursive script. "Hi, Luke. What can I get you today?" The girl behind the counter smiled warmly. He ordered 2 cups of steaming black coffee, while Abby sat down at a small table by the big window. She looked outside at the snow-dusted street, the glowing Christmas decorations, the town she knew so well. Yet something felt different, familiar, but not quite right. "I'm Luke, by the way," the man introduced himself as he set the cups down. Yes, she heard that. But she wasn't processing it. Abby's stomach twisted. "I'm Abby." "That's a pretty name. Are you from here, Abby? Or just visiting?" The small talk momentarily distracted her from the gnawing sense of unease. "A little bit of both, I guess. I was born here, but moved away when I went to college." He nodded, sipping his coffee. Abby studied his face. The only pictures she had of her dad were old and grainy. Not much to go on. But this man felt so eerily familiar. Maybe a long-lost brother? A cousin? Someone with an uncanny resemblance to her father? Maybe this was the reason her dad disappeared so suddenly after she was born. Maybe he was the reason. She cleared her throat, trying to form a coherent sentence. "So, what about you? Are you from around here?" "Yeah, born and raised." "And what do you do?" Abby needed to know more. "Nothing much to tell. I work odd jobs here and there, but I'm trying to find something more permanent. Maybe move to a bigger place next year." They each took another sip of coffee. Abby glanced around again. She didn't recognize the people in the cafe. The decor seemed off, more old-fashioned. Then something else struck her. "I don't recognize this place," she muttered, almost to herself. Luke heard her. "Really? It's been here forever. Maybe I just never paid much attention," she said, forcing a small smile. "You should. It's a great place." He laughed suddenly and pointed toward the jukebox in the back. "That's where my wife and I shared our first kiss. We're expecting a baby girl any day now." Abby blinked. Oh, she couldn't help but smile at the small anecdote. He even blushed slightly. "Sorry, I don't know why I just said that." His voice lowered. Now it was his turn to study her. There was something about her. The same blue eyes as his. But her hair, light and wavy, falling in big waves around her shoulders. "You remind me of her," he said, realizing it. Abby's fingers tightened around her cup. "Oh, my wife," he said, his voice softer now. "Her hair, the way you move your face. You look like her." Abby swallowed hard, but remained silent. Luke chuckled awkwardly, shaking his head as if trying to get rid of the thought. "It's strange, though. You feel familiar? Have we met before?" Abby forced a small smile. "What do you say to that?" With this feeling in her gut, she couldn't explain. "No, I don't think so." He nodded slowly, like trying to fit together pieces of a puzzle that wouldn't align. Weird. Weird didn't even begin to cover it. Maybe his wife was the missing piece in all of this. "What's her name?" "Your wife?" Abby asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Part of her already knew, but needed him to confirm it. "Julie." Luke leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the table, as though he could read the answer in her face. "You know her. Are you related?" Abby's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This couldn't be a coincidence. His name was Luke. His wife's name was Julie. They were expecting a baby girl. Cold realization crept over her like a shadow. Could this be the man who vanished when she was a baby? Could this actually be her father? She opened her mouth, her breath quick and shallow. "No, I don't think so." The cafe's warmth faded. The clinking of cups, the murmur of voices, all drowned out by the rush of blood in her ears. Luke wasn't moving. He stared at her, eyes searching, waiting, and then, like a dam breaking, she couldn't hold it in anymore. "I think she's my mom." Abby's voice trembled. "I think you're my dad. You disappeared almost 25 years ago. Right after I was born." Luke didn't react at first. The weight of her words sank into the space between them, heavy and unmovable. Seconds passed like hours. She wanted to run, but stayed glued to her seat opposite of him. Then he finally spoke. "That's not possible. I'm right here. I'm not missing. I come to this place all the time." He shook his head, as if refusing to let the realization settle. "Besides, I would have been a kid, 6 years old back then." "Back then?" The words caught in Abby's throat. Back when? Her fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. She inhaled sharply, steadying herself before asking the question she suddenly dreaded. "What year is it?" Luke's face was a storm of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, something close to fear. 1999. Abby's breath left her in a silent gasp. The world around her warped, twisted. The answer she had been looking for had been right in front of her all along. She had stepped back in time, The above story ends, but never stops. Here is another story that will not disappoint you. Repercussion. I remember the car crash that took my grandmother's life like it was yesterday. And when I say I remember, I mean vividly, because I was in the passenger seat. We hit an oncoming vehicle, trying to overtake on a blind bend. My grandmother seemed to register the car and sighed at the inevitable. Everything happened in slow motion. The sound of metal crushing, air whooshing past where it shouldn't. The man who was trying to overtake hit the driver's side of my car and ended up hitting a tree and burning to death after impact. It felt like we were spinning for ages. I had looked over at my grandmother, hunched over, a look of pure terror mirroring my own. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was told the woman in the third car avoided the crash completely and pulled up onto the grassy bank on the other side of the road from where the car was burning to call the police. My mother was a wreck for weeks after, ranting at me from the minute I opened my eyes in the hospital bed. How could you let her drive, Anne? It was your car, your responsibility. The doctor, with his blue scrubs and shaved head, said it was a miracle. I only had a fractured wrist and concussion, considering my grandmother had split her head open, lost her arm with the car door, and had a heart attack as she bled out. I knew my mother's rage was mostly because I was unconscious for the last few moments of her mother's life, where she died alone and in pain. My father tried to reassure me that it wasn't my fault, but I knew it was. I knew she would still be here if I had driven. The morning of the crash, she had walked the mile or so. It was from her house to ours, hoping we could go shopping together, as she did almost every Saturday since I got my license. Because I idolized her, when she asked to drive us, I would always let her, every time. I wasn't allowed to visit her, lying in rest in the chapel. It will upset the aunts and uncles too much, was the excuse my mother used. She was the heart and soul of the family, you understand. But I didn't. She was my grandmother. She was part of me too. They should have let me say goodbye. A week after the funeral, the dreams started. She always turned up at the front door, asking if I wanted to go shopping with her, much like she did the morning of the crash. Those first few weeks, I always woke up not long after I saw her standing there, the terror jolting me out of the dream. I rarely dreamt before the crash. Sleep then had been beautiful blackness. I prayed for a dreamless sleep to return, growing weary of the overactive repetition of my sleeping mind. As time went on, and winter came around, the dreams uncontrollably got longer. I would agree to drive her, and as I walked out the front door in my dream, she would start having a heart attack, falling to the ground in a pile of blood that rose from the grassy lawn. When I told my father about this, fearful of letting my mother know, he put it down to the medication I was on. He took me back to the doctors, who prescribed me something else to try. The dreams didn't stop, but they didn't get worse either. I tried to return to normal, going to volleyball practice and on date nights with my boyfriend, Phil. It worked for a little while. Nearly 2 months after the crash, I opened my curtains one morning and looked down at the lawn, as I had done every morning of my life, to see someone standing at the end of the drive, about 100 yards away. I didn't pay much attention to them the first day, or second. On the third day, the person moved a bit closer to the house, as if demanding to be seen. My grandmother looked up at me with a blank expression. I shut the curtains, trying to ignore the apparition. I was convinced death was coming to get me, so I stopped sleeping, afraid I wouldn't wake up. The lack of sleep meant grandmother was around more, stalking me from a closer proximity, standing behind me in the mirror as I washed my face in the morning, sitting in the back of the car when my mother took me to school, walking past me in the hallways at school. I was grateful she remained silent, and her right arm was still intact. She had given me a cross for my 10th birthday, and I dug it out of my closet and started wearing it constantly, hoping it would ward off her spirit, or at least trick my brain into warding her off. But the cross did nothing. I Googled ways to relax. It told me to take a bath and eat healthier food. I was barely eating, so I took a bath. Everything was okay, until the bath water turned bright red, like fresh blood. And I passed out from a mixture of fear and lack of food. My mother found me hours later, prune-like and shivering in the water. "Can't you see it?" I said through chattering teeth. She looked over my body as if checking for injury. "See what? What did you do?" I spoke slowly, my voice raspy. "The bath is filled with blood." My mother flinched, as though I had slapped her, then pulled the plug out and let the bath drain. Then she wrapped me in 3 towels and bundled me downstairs to sit in front of the fire, where I watched my grandmother's face dance behind the flames. One Saturday, at the height of my newfound insanity, as Phil was cooking us dinner in his family home, he called me by her name, Hazel. I got a head rush from the shock, and I closed my eyes for a few seconds while I waited for it to pass. When I opened my eyes again, my grandmother appeared in front of me, where I stood by the stove, smiling at me for the first time since she had appeared posthumously. I started screaming. Weeks of no sleep, being haunted by your dead grandmother, will eventually make you lose your mind. Phil couldn't calm me down, and ended up calling my parents to come and get me. No one else could see her standing there smiling, her mouth twisted more to the right than I remembered. Her eyes followed me wherever I went in the room, but she remained in place. "Maybe we need to take her to see a specialist," I heard my mother say to my father as I sobbed in the back seat of the car. "She already has a doctor," There's something not right about her. Not anymore. She needs to see a psychiatrist or something. But the specialist, who prescribed me even more pills, told me repeatedly that at 17, I wasn't seeing my dead grandmother. You just have clinical exhaustion. You'll be fine. That night, I took the new pills I had been given to put me to sleep, only to be woken up by the feeling of hands around my neck, crushing my windpipe. I opened my eyes to see my grandmother standing over me as I lay in bed, unable to move. What a shame, my grandmother hissed, her voice deep and not at all the sweet sing-song voice she had in life. I needed her to stop haunting me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I fought to get the words out. I would do anything to trade places with you. Anything. Her mouth pulled up slowly on the right side. Anything. I was gasping in the dark. No, not gasping. Choking. Choking on something in my throat. A snake crawled into my mouth and was snaking its way to my stomach. I could feel my lips around its slimy body. "She's awake," I heard my mother say. Couldn't she see I was being suffocated? I peeled back my dry eyelids as the snake started to move, feeling a lot like this was the end. Especially when I was met with blinding light, blinking until the room came into focus. To first see the doctor with his shaved head, who was pulling a tube out of my mouth. Then I noticed my mother to the right of me, standing up next to the bed. Father sat beside her. Furthest away from me was my grandmother, standing in the doorway, her lips taut in a wry smile. I was going to be sick. "It's okay, Anne. It's okay," my mother began, stroking my hair as soon as the doctor was finished. "You were in an accident, but you're okay." This wasn't happening. Or rather, this had already happened, hadn't it? I went to wipe my tears away with my right hand, but for some reason, I couldn't move it. Grandmother still stood in the doorway, now expressionless. I tried to see what was trapping my right arm, but I couldn't see anything for the sheet covering me. "You were in a car crash, darling. You..." But my mother couldn't continue, breaking into sobs. I tried to say, "What?" but it came out all muffled and wrong. My tongue, somehow, too big for my mouth. My father was shaking his head. "You were in a car crash, Anne," grandmother said. Her voice that had evaded me for weeks was frail and dry. "The impact tore your right arm off." No, this wasn't happening. I was shaking my head frantically. The doctor was concerned with my heart rate and hyperventilation, injecting me with something that made the world go fuzzy. Grandmother moved closer to me in my haze, still not smiling. She seemed to be talking to my parents about something, but I couldn't hear them. The drugs were too powerful. Reality eventually slipped away, and I fell into a dreamless sleep for once. When I woke up, I opened my eyes to my dimly lit bedroom at home, looking exactly as it had On the morning of the crash, my heart was pounding in my chest. I kept telling myself it was a dream. It was all just a dream. The crash, the hospital, everything. But I was too scared to move, for fear I discovered my right arm was missing. The Odyssey. As the sea tosses the Odyssey between its mountainous waves, like a ping-pong ball, it's all I can do to keep one hand on the rudder. She's in bad shape, and I'm not much better. Ugly, purple-blue bruises stain my arms and sides from the amount of times I've been thrown against the edge of the boat, with wind stinging me with its spiteful embrace, and rain blurring my vision like tears. I can hardly see a foot in front of me. Although it wouldn't be much if I could, the whole ocean from the waves ahead, the Odyssey to the horizon, is frothed up in a frenzy of movement, and everything looks the same. Another wave crashes against the side of the boat, and she tips sideways. My legs slip out from under me. I'm hanging, arms stretched high over my head as I hold on to the rudder. The Odyssey is almost still, stuck in the uncertain midpoint between falling right way up or upside down. I clench my eyes shut and breathe in deeply. My stomach clenches as I try to hold in the air I'll need when the boat gets overturned. The vicious wind assaulting my ears stops me from hearing the wave that turns us over. My head hits the deck. I lose my grip on the rudder. My senses flood with water. I try to keep a clear head without opening my eyes. Hopefully, the hundreds of storms I've been in before have adequately prepared me for this. It's what I think every time, but I never know until the storm has passed and I'm still alive. Under the surface, the current's still the same. It tosses me from one wave to another. I grope around for a handhold. I must know this deck enough to find one. But within the rage of the storm, I can't place my thoughts steadily enough to get a clear picture of the deck above water. And I plan to spend as little time as possible studying it from below. After what was probably minutes rather than hours, but was, in either case, too long, I manage to grip something. It's a kind of pole, thick, so that I have to use both hands to hold on. My lungs raise a tentative whine, a plea for my mouth to open. Not yet, I tell them. Previous storms have taught me I'll have to wait until the fury is over before I upturn my boat. In the meantime, I'll have to find my way onto the bottom of the vessel to catch a breath and try not to slip off until the storm has passed. I claw my way to the edge. My eyes are stinging from the exposure to salt water and from how tightly I'm clamping them together. There's a flame alight in my lungs, and I fight the urge to open my mouth for just 1 second to put the fire out. I grab the end of the keel and try to push myself up, but it's too wet and slippery to get a firm hold. The waves slap me against the boat. My mouth opens involuntarily to groan in pain, and I clamp it shut. Too early or too late, water has managed to creep inside my mouth, but air hasn't, clinging desperately to the edge of the keel. I wrap my legs around the rope that's always coiled on the end of the deck, not daring to open my eyes. I clench my knees together and try to pull the rope up to me. It slips. I only just catch it with my feet. Suppressing a yelp, I force myself to remain calm. Panicking could make me drown. Trying a different tactic, I use my boots to spread the rope out. I have to let go of the keel with one hand so I can hold it. I hesitate, then shake the reluctance out of my head. Indecision could make me drown too. My lungs burn as if they're packed with ice. My left hand slips, and I take the opportunity to grasp the rope. Pulling it upwards, I grab the keel again, this time holding the rope between two fingers. A lull in the waves lets me take a shaky breath. Just enough to keep me going. I try again with my right hand. Letting go of the keel, I grip the rope between two fingers. I fiddle with it until I've got a good grip. Then pull my hand up to grasp the keel again. This is always the hardest part. So far, I've always managed it. But there's a first time for everything. If this doesn't work, I'm dead. I can't help the thought. I shove it away, recalling the face of my wife and daughter. I need to live, at least for them. Gathering my courage, I pull my hands up, bringing the rope with me. It goes taut, and I stop myself, breathing a sigh of relief. It would only waste breath. Tugging the rope upwards, I haul myself onto the bottom of the Odyssey and allow myself a breath. My lungs are still burning, but it's bearable for now. Only one more job. Taking a deep breath, I lay on my front and force my head underwater. I don't waste time tying a double anchor bend around the closest rail of my boat. Finishing it, I drag my head out of the water and quickly tie the other end of rope around my waist in a bowline knot. I pull myself back out of the water and treat myself to a well-earned breath. A few drops of salt water splash past my open lips, but at least I'm not drowning anymore. Lying uncomfortably on my front, I stretch my arms and legs out to improve balance. I can feel my face turning red from being pressed against the keel, so I turn it sideways. One eye is too squashed to open. The other is squinted for maximum balance of sight and clarity, given the waves that continue to assault me. Until the storm passes, I'm stuck like this. Afterwards, I can safely overturn the Odyssey. I can only hope it won't happen before I've untied myself. But for now, all I can do is wait. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.